Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jude Allume again here with Wil Masisak. Nailed it, yeah.
Nailed it.
Welcome to Old School New School, episode 3. They haven't banned us on any of our platforms yet, so we're doing something right, I guess.
Actually, I'm sure if you're doing something right, you get deplatformed early, but
wonderful. So I guess we're doing something wrong, and we'll fix that accordingly. You guys know what happened. It's Tuesday. It's been talked to death, but we're going to talk about it some more. The Super Bowl went down this past Sunday. We all know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won, beat the Chiefs, me and Will had as winning. Defense, who I said you don't need to win a championship. I'm just pointing out all the ways that we were both wrong.
Oh, yeah. Well, I also said these games between the two quarterbacks who won previously usually are classic games. Yeah, this was not
a classic game. No.
This was not a classic game. However, it's just I guess I'll go first. It was a bit of a shock to the system to see a Patrick Mahomes-led team on the wrong end of one of these games, because we've seen these kinds of games before, and they happen to even good teams and good quarterbacks. But it just was a little bit of a shock because it hadn't happened to him yet in his pro career. But
first time losing by double digits.
That's right. But I'll say this: that looked an awful lot like Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. Yeah. So Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech was basically got a bad reputation for throwing interceptions, for trying to make wild plays and so on and so forth. It just boils down to one thing: the guy will do anything to win, and when things are not going his way and not going his offense's way, and guys around him aren't making plays, then he's going to run around until he can find a miracle throw to attempt. And he makes more of those than not, and actually several of them in this game hit his receivers in the hands. But you just can't have pass protection problems like that. And other complementary players who don't step up like that and expect to win a Super Bowl against not only a really good team, but against a guy like Tom Brady.
Absolutely. I mean, the guy was running for his life all game. That's kind of shocking to me because, offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, he's one of the greatest offensive coordinators in the league right now. Andy Reid, one of the greatest coaches in the league right now. And they just failed to adjust. Even after going into the half, they didn't do anything to help give your star quarterback more time. And that was so shocking to me because they weren't even blitzing that much. They were pretty much getting there with 4 guys. And you don't say, you know what, let's leave an extra guy in. Let's get our heavy running back in there. You didn't do anything to adjust, and it just shocked me. And, just like you said, as a result, we see Patrick Mahomes just running around, and it's like it wasn't a great stat line, but you can't really blame him for it because he's just trying to do whatever he can do to keep his team in the game, and they were just out of it. I want to say the first 5 minutes of the first quarter, they kind of had a shot, but after that, it was pretty much.
I was going to say, by about halfway through the second quarter, it was done. This is why I don't penalize quarterbacks. People want to talk about turnovers as being the turnovers are key. Not in a game like this. The turnovers that Patrick Mahomes made in this game had nothing to do with the outcome. It was him trying to make a play because his team wasn't making any plays. And it's like sometimes you got to try to fit the ball in, and sometimes guys got to catch it and not let it ricochet off them to the defenders too. Yeah. But that to me is like, I'd rather have a guy that goes down swinging, and who cares how many interceptions he throws if he's trying every time he has the ball to make a play to maybe get your team back in the game. So I was down with all that. Agree with you 100% about not adding keeping a blocker in. But this is a Kansas City thing. If you look at their history the last couple of years, they never keep Kelsey in. They're not using Kelsey in pass protection. They are using him as a thing. Like, even if you're going to put pressure on us, we'll get the ball out quickly to Kelsey, and that'll solve our problems. He's their pass protection. But if you're not going to let
Kelsey stay in, why not let another tight end come in and block? Do something. Get your fullback in there,
or even have the running back. Chip guys, which they barely
certainly weren't running the ball. So why not have them?
And early in the game, I think the adjustment was they're playing cover 2. Tampa basically played a pretty simple defense. They played cover 2 on the top, and they played sort of a matchup zone. Depending, who you are, you could call it man under, or you could call it 2-man. but they essentially had their two great linebackers patrolling the middle of the field, and particularly Levante David kind of in the pocket of Kelsey all night, so that even though Kelsey accumulated stats as the night went on and they played a little softer later in the game, when the game was really in doubt, he made everything hard, for Kelsey. And it was not just there quickly to get rid of the ball. So Mahomes had to take off and run.
Absolutely. But that's another thing too. Like besides just them not having anybody there blocking, when they actually ran the ball, Tampa Bay is the best run defense in the league. But when they actually ran the ball, the handful of times they did, it was working. And it's like, why not just keep running the ball since that seems to be the only thing that's working for you guys? And it's like they had 2 or 3 runs in a drive, and then at the end of the drive, they're just like, we're going to throw it, we're going to throw it, we're going to throw it. But you got first down with this running game that you're doing right now against the number 1 run defense. And then just like you said, like they were playing that too high. They were determined not to let Tyreek Hill do the same thing to them.
And why would you? He killed them the last time.
Yeah. Kudos to Tampa Bay, absolutely. But if you're Kansas City and this isn't working, at some point, why aren't you saying we need to do something else? In the third quarter, when you're going down 3-4 scores, let's try something else. Super Bowl. We cannot go out like this. What can we do? And it just never came. Like all season, not a lot of times, but the few times that Kansas City actually did trail, even against the Bills when they were down like 11 points, these guys are just on the sideline. They're cooling. They're hanging out. No worries, no stress. They just know it that they're going to come back and they're going to win the game. And it happened pretty much every time. This game was like the first time I looked, and it just looked like these guys weren't sure what they were going to do. The players looked frustrated. Yeah. Mahomes looked like he didn't know what was going on the sideline. He was just disinterested. And I mean, if I'm running for my life the entire game, I understand. I'd feel that way as well. Yeah. But it's just like, what happened on this sideline where you have all these great coaches and they're just not adjusting when they're getting their tuchus handed to them?
I think it's just stubbornness. And part of it is that they've been justified in being stubborn because they've stuck with the game plan, and it always worked out for them. In this case, it didn't. But Tampa's a unique defense that the stuff that you might do to alleviate, we're getting our offensive line is getting overrun by pass rush. Guys are in our quarterback's face right away. So what do? The solutions are you run and you throw short passes, right? That you get the ball out quickly. But the problem against Tampa Bay is with those linebackers that they have in the middle and the way their strong safety and nickel guys play, they take that away from you. Like running is not easy against them. And if you try to throw those short passes, that's go playing to their strengths. What they're really not as good at were those throws. And I think I might have said this. Well, I know I said it in pregame, one of the places where I was, asked to say something about it. But you have to get it past the second level and in front of those 2 deep safeties. That's the place. So in order to do that, you had to keep a guy in and block. You had to do something. You had to fake, the run enough.
That extra second. That's all.
Yeah. Because that against Tampa Bay's defense, the way it's constructed, you just can't count on those quick throws materializing much. They're not going to give those to you the way that some teams do.
I don't know if you can't count on it. I feel like they just weren't really looking to go outside of Kelsey and Hill. None of those other guys that, I was expecting that they would, take advantage of, none of them really kind of got those short passes. None of them really got many targets. I mean, we saw Sammy Watkins with like 1 catch, I think, 1 or 2 catches.
Not 100%, I guess. Just by looking at him, he didn't look 100%.
Yeah. Demarcus Robinson, I don't know if he made any. I know he had 1 target that he didn't catch in the end zone. Mecole Hardman, I know he had for sure like 2 targets. 1 was a pass where he just wasn't even looking for it. And it's just like all these guys was like 2 targets and less. And you're just really trying to get the ball to Hill. You're really trying to get the ball to Watkins. And it's like, why not take advantage of all these other super speedy receivers that you have? If they're determined to take away Hill and you can't have any time to, throw the ball, do those little short passes to Mecole Hardman. He's another guy that runs a 4.3. Why aren't you taking advantage of it?
Did they run? I mean, they ran a couple of wide receiver screens, but then you got Devin Bush chasing sideline to sideline. Oh, not Devin Bush, Devin White. I wish. Devin White running sideline to sideline. I mean, they are basically they made a defensive plan that fit their defense to a T in terms of what they're good at, and they did it to a team that just wasn't. And you can talk about Andy Reid and Bieniemy all you want. They're really good at when they dictate the terms on offense, but this was a situation where, I mean, anytime you can rush 4 and get pressure on the other quarterback, it's trouble. I don't care if you're Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, doesn't matter, right? So that right away is a huge advantage.
They got out coached severe.
But if you don't adjust, that's a truism. Rushing 4 and getting pressure is a problem. But if you can't adjust to that and have a plan for what you're going to do if that happens, I mean, they knew. People are talking about, well, they had some replacement offensive linemen. They had 4 of the 5 guys they started in Week 12, right? But they had guys that were playing a tackle that hadn't played there in a while, a few weeks at least. The thing is, they knew that going into the game. They had two weeks to know that. So if you know that you have tackles that are maybe a bit risky, then you really should have had this contingency plan for what happens if our tackles get killed, right? If our tackles are getting killed, then we have to chip to help them. We have to keep a tight end in. We have to throw short passes, screens. We have to do something, give them running plays, something that they're good at so that they don't get killed. So that, where was that adjustment from 2 great coaches? Crazy.
This never happened. I mean, but we got to look at the other side as well with Tampa Bay. Besides their defense, which did a great job offensively, they just came out. They came out swinging, and Steve Spagnuolo had no answers for them. I mean,
nope.
I would say the refs did play a major part. I do believe I'm a guy who believes momentum carries in football games, probably more than any other sport that I've seen. And to have that interception and they call it back and then they go and score, I feel like that was really a turning point of the game. Because if you don't score, then, maybe you hold them to 3. It's still a 1-score game. You get the ball. You're not holding them to 3. If that penalty isn't there, then, you get the ball back. That's no points. Maybe you use that momentum. You go down and score. And
changes the game.
It's a different game, but there were just a lot of calls. I feel like this is a Super Bowl. You probably could have let that go. There was a holding call. I'm looking at it. I'm like, I've seen worse going called.
Yeah, well, the one on the offensive line holding, you talking about he had his arm around his neck. That should be called. That's not. They weren't calling it all season. Right. But this year, in this football season, 2020-21, that's a call that they haven't been making, but that's a holding call going back to forever. Now, do they always call it? No, but it's like, if somebody shows that replay to an NFL official, they're going to tell you that's a hold. It's hard. I think it's not
justified. Is just keep it consistent with what we've been seeing all season.
I mean, I felt like the first and goal or whatever it was, first and goal pass interference against. That would be the Honey Badger, right? That one was a bit sketchy on both counts.
I didn't like that one. I didn't like the one on Snead. I didn't like that call at all. I mean, he had his arm on him, but it wasn't like it wasn't like it altered the receiver's movement at all. Like his hand was there, and I guess if you want to be really technical, your hand shouldn't be there. Yeah. But the receiver, it didn't impede it. And then there was the one on Mike Evans, the pass.
That one I thought was legit because the player when he was
falling,
when he was falling, he literally reached out and grabbed the back of Evans's leg.
He would have needed to make a hell of a play on that ball. That was not a catchable ball. But I guess if you want to be to the team, I thought
that one was at least close to being catchable.
Played by the rules, I suppose. Go for it. But Steve Spagnuolo, like, what happened? You had the recipe. Put pressure on Tom Brady. This is what you did before, and not going to be comfortable. He's not going to be the GOAT quarterback that he is. And they just couldn't get to him all night. And as you can see, he goes to his favorite targets. Gronk, 2 touchdowns on the game. Where was that all season? He was saving it for this game, apparently. He goes to AD. They've got these young weapons, but it's the old guys that are, like, taking care of business for him.
And Gronk wasn't, to be fair, Gronk wasn't Gronk until about 5 weeks ago. It's like it took him a little while to get into game shape. But I also think a very underrated part of their success in this game was that Byron Leftwich, I'm not sure everything that he does in terms of coordinating this offense. Arians is pretty smart in terms of the scheme. Brady knows everything, and they kind of ran a Brady system. But Leftwich is an excellent play caller. Like he has, some guys just have the vibe for, the series of plays that you run that work off each other. Given the same look and running different plays off of it, and just having a feel for like when to call what. I feel like he's very underrated in that regard. I always thought so. It's just watching him this year. I felt like he had, when they had the quarterback in particular, that seemed to make a big difference for them. But I saw the Buccaneers play last year in person in LA in a game that they basically crushed the Rams, who were a big favorite that day. And it was just Tampa was like when they had it going, they were pretty good. When they didn't, when they didn't have it going last year, they could be blown out. So they were that team that could blow you out or be blown out. And the thing is, you bring a Tom Brady in, it kind of changes everything about your consistency. Because if there's one thing that guy is, it's consistent.
And then you're going to get the morale boost just knowing you have Tom Brady as well.
You believe.
Everybody's just playing a little bit harder now all of a sudden. But to your point, he definitely called a great game. I feel like they came in knowing that they were a team that really liked to throw the ball deep. And they knew Kansas City would know that and try to take that away. And they said, we're not even going to worry about that. We're going to just kill you with these short passes, kill you with these screens. And then once in a while, not as often as we used to do it, we'll throw that deep shot. Gronk had the deep shot touchdown. And it worked to perfection. It was like, I don't know if Kansas City was specifically trying to stop the deep ball and, kind of played a little bit further back in this game, but they just had no answers for the short game, for those quick passes, for those quick runs that Tampa Bay was doing. And I'm just looking at Spagnuolo and I'm just like, at some point, your defense has to make a play because right now your offense isn't working. And it kind of goes back to, the flaws that Kansas City had all season. Not a great defense, but a defense that makes plays when needed.
Especially when they're ahead. But they're built to play when they're ahead.
From ahead, yeah. Superb offense, don't really need to run the ball. They can run the ball if they want, but more often than not, they don't want to run the ball. They don't care to because they have such a great passing offense. And these are the two ways in which they just got killed. They refused to run the ball, even though it was working for them. And then defensively, the defense, they just couldn't play up to the competition. And we see what happens as a result. Right now, they need to really reassess and say, if we want to be the juggernaut that we're going to be, we need to fix this defense so it can be stout and be more than a we're here if needed type of defense and just a good defense on its own.
And I think also they need to have a come to Jesus moment about their offense that as good as it's been, they have to be prepared for a team that can stop what they do and know what to do and have things in their back pocket,
We can move on to the
so let's talk about something significant today, which is that former head coach of I want to say 3 franchises, Marty Schottenheimer, passed away today.
Cleveland, San Diego, Washington. I'm blanking on that 4th.
Maybe it was only 3.
San Diego, Washington. There's a 4th.
Okay, well, suffice to say, not only a great coach, a good player. The controversy was that when his passing was announced, the Washington Post ran a headline that said, coach whose team's wilted in the playoffs dies. It's like a pretty terrible way to talk about somebody who won like 65% of his games in the league. But I probably remember Schottenheimer a little better than you, so I'll start. Marty's MO was basically he was an old school coach, So like when you think of now, like Bill Cowher was a protege of Marty Schottenheimer. So very similar kind of, would get in guys' faces, expected, everyone to play to that level of intensity and so on and so forth. And, maybe that made it so, his offenses were very conservative in a way and got more conservative as the pressure mounted. And I think that was probably the thing that did him in the playoffs was just this formula that worked so well for him that he turned around several franchises with this same, formula of good defense, solid special teams, do just enough on offense, and we're going to win a lot of football games. And he did that everywhere he went. but it just kind of had this ceiling where when faced against better opponents in the postseason, the formula didn't work as well. But I don't feel like I need to hold that against the guy today. I'm willing to say without reservation, he was a great coach. Probably should be a Hall of Fame coach, which he isn't right now. And his coaching tree is unbelievable. The guys that he gave his first job to Bruce Arians, to Bill Cowher, to about 5 other former or current NFL coaches. So the guys obviously knew how to pick talent and train coaches.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right. I mean, I really know him from his time with San Diego, and seeing how, he's a defensive coach, but I'm seeing how, LaDainian Tomlinson just grew up under him, and, it kind of goes with exactly
Pound
what
the rock.
He wanted to play great defense, and he wanted to run the ball. And, LaDainian Tomlinson had some great years under him, obviously. And, those San Diego defenses were pretty great as well. But just like you said, they weren't elites. They couldn't get over that hump of first, second round of the playoffs. But that's not what we're really here to discuss. This was a great coach, a career coach, spent most of his adult life as a coach, and it's what he did best. It's what he enjoyed doing, and it's always unfortunate when we lose somebody like that. As far as I know, as far as what I've heard from players that he's coached and coaches that he's coached with, just a great guy, and unfortunate situation, but we'll remember him for the great coach he was, and I'm sure eventually he'll get that nod into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, by the way, the four teams were Kansas City. How
did I forget Kansas?
The Washington franchise, San Diego Chargers. He was also an assistant with Detroit and the Giants in the NFL. So Marty Schottenheimer, also a Pittsburgher. He's from the town of Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. Which I'll date. See, I'm the old guy on the show, so I get to say this. Do you even know who Bobby Vinton and Perry Como? Do you know who those cats are?
No.
So they were pop singers in the 50s and 60s. Perry Como was super famous. Bobby Vinton had number one, Blue Velvet. That was his hit. Anyhow, Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, population about 500, and all 3 of those guys are from there. Yeah. What do you know? So Marty, so speaking of coaches and great coaches, one last thing I wanted to mention on the show today is, the coaching carousel in the NFL. You get all these coaches right towards the last week of the season, just after the season's over. A lot of people get fired. A lot of the coordinators get let go, and you have this coaching carousel where teams are moving guys around and hiring new assistants and head coaches. And the problem is, you get these really great coaches, assistants who have got playoff teams and are busy and not always available to interview. Particularly once they get, I think it's a week before the championship games, they can't even be interviewed until after they're out of the postseason. So for guys like the aforementioned Eric Bieniemy, Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich, they were stuck because they all 3 showed some great stuff this year coaching as assistants. Maybe would have had a chance to get at least an interview or 2, and didn't really get much look because of the situation with the coaching jobs getting filled so early. So my question for you is, what's a solution for this that the NFL can come up with that will work for teams? Because I just don't understand the wisdom of guys who are having the most success right now in the league. Don't you want to nab one of those guys? How does that not happen?
There's not going to be an easy solution to it, especially with this extra hurdle of COVID, So you've got a guy who's still coaching, still in the hunt for a Super Bowl. You don't want him going around and meeting people that he otherwise wouldn't be meeting because, COVID is a thing still. So say they did do it and they're able to go on all these interviews and one of them comes back, with a negative COVID test. Now they can't coach, and that becomes a whole thing. But I feel like to just kind of even the playing field, they should just push it back just like they do with, the free agency. Until the season is over, we can't hire any new coaches. We can't, we can't have any of the interviews. And I mean, that's the only way that's really going to make it like an even playing ground, because here we have these great guys that you just mentioned. And, I think only Bowles, I didn't hear about, well, actually, they all
I think got one interview.
I don't know if Leftwich interviewed anywhere, but I know Bowles was interviewing with a couple guys, but he couldn't go to additional interviews, even though he was in the running for a couple positions. So just put everything to the end of the season. That way you can assess everything. You're not having to take into consideration the COVID and, tampering and all of these things. And it's just, if the guy is there and he's available and you want him, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to clear anything. Because I feel like a lot of times teams just don't want to deal with getting clearance from a team, getting clearance from the NFL, and you just want to talk to a guy that's available. If you're not available, then unfortunately, we're going to move on to the next candidate. You want to fix it? Just make everybody wait until everyone's available.
Yeah, I actually like that. I didn't expect you to come up with a solution, but I like that. A window for the coaching hiring, just like they have for free agents.
Just like
you can have a tampering period for a week before that, where you're at least allowed to reach out to them and say, "Hey, we want to interview you next week. Don't take another job." Or whatever, All right, so just one last thing to wrap up the show, and that is sort of the $1 million question: Does Tampa Bay have a chance to repeat next year? Are we going to see these same two teams? Is Tom Brady going to be the same Tom Brady next year? Gronk going to come back? These are all the sort of questions, the magic questions of the Super Bowl.
This is not a question as a last thing. Last thing is supposed to be quick, but that's not a quick one.
Well, give us a quick answer. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to talk about it.
I'll try and spitfire him. Tom Brady, will he be back? Yes, he will.
He already said, yeah.
He already said he will, and he's just a competitor where he's like,
going to play to 50, Jude. I'm telling you right now. He wants to play to 50.
But is he going to be good next year? I don't know. The thing about quarterbacks in that age is, they just fall off a cliff. And, who's to say it won't happen this year? Who's to say it will happen this year? It's one of those things you just got to wait and see. Will Tampa Bay be back? If they can keep that defense together and still add pieces to that already good defense, and they can play the way they've played the last 7 weeks over the entire season, then absolutely they can be back. Because if you get Tom Brady, he's still good, then they will still be a great team, not a good team, a great team that can score a lot of points. Will the Chiefs be back? I think so. I think this is an anomaly, not something that's going to happen. A lot of people are going to see what happened in this game and try to duplicate it, replicate it, and pressure Mahomes. They're going to get Eric Fisher back. They're probably going to add a lot of talent on the offensive line after having to see that. They're going to add some talent on that defense, and I think they'll still be good. Hopefully, they can. I don't want to say they're not bad coaches. This was just one bad coaching game. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. I think they'll be back. This is a Kansas City team. I think that's going to be good for a long time.
Yeah, I think Kansas City is, let's put it this way. Tampa Bay is in the most danger of not making it back out of the two because, although they have matched up very well with Kansas City, there could be a different team that they don't match up as well with. And they're sort of, they're just sort of built to beat Kansas City right now, and vice versa. So Kansas City's chances of getting back, since they don't have to face Tampa until they get there, might also be pretty good. There are a few teams that can match up in a similar way, but a lot of things change between now and the middle of next season. So we'll wait and see.
A lot of things change between games. I mean, honestly,
week to week league. It's a week to week league, Jude.
If you play this game 10 times, I don't think they're going to get smoked like that 10 times. No. Maybe it'll happen twice, 3 times, but I don't think 10 times in a row they'll get beat like that.
However, on Sunday night, if they had played 2 more quarters, I'm not convinced Kansas City would have scored.
We're not talking. At that point on Sunday night, they were already defeated. They were already out of it. They're like, all right, just give them the trophy. Let's get up out of here.
The factor with Kansas City to watch out for the next couple of years is now Patrick Mahomes' contract extension kicks in. And, you had this window when you have a young quarterback who's fantastic on their first contract because you can have money to burn with other players on the team. But if I'm not mistaken, I think they got some of their key guys are about to come up and they don't have the same money that they used to have. So how they manage that the next few years will be interesting. I'm not positive. We can delve into this when we get into free agency, but I just think that their window may not be as long as you might think it would be, even though they have the best quarterback in the game.
They need to make some great draft picks is all I'll say.
Everybody, and no one's getting worse, man. Everybody's trying to get better.
Yeah, everybody's trying to get better. Listen, I like Herbert, man. Be on the lookout for Herbert because they've got a great defense. It's just the injury bugs have been killing them. But I'll keep that for another episode. We're a little short on time now.
It's all good, bro. I think we all can get better, including us next week.
Absolutely.
When on another edition of Old School, New School, he is. I think he's the new school guy. He's Jude Allume. I'm Wil Masisak. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to click the button that says like or subscribe, no matter how you listen or watch. Join us on Facebook, on Twitter, OSNSFB, and we'll see you out there in the interwebs. And until then, have a good week.
See you.
Pound it.
Yeah.
Let's work.
Good stuff.